In today's video, we are going to cut it into kind of two parts. The first one is going to be a little bit about the situation going on over in Asia, and at the end I'm going to show you exactly why, without any kind of debate, that this was an attack based on the track of the ACX crystal. This is a man named James Baker, and he was the Secretary of State during my time in the military. To put it bluntly, we are a very, very long way from the times of Norman Schwarzkopf, Caspar Weinberger, Ronald Reagan, Bush Sr., these guys. He's going to say some things here about diplomacy and its role in the world versus military action. And once he's done speaking, we're going to contrast that with Mr. Tellerson.
You don't just talk to your friends, you talk to your enemies as well. And the diplomacy involves talking to your enemies. You don't reward your enemies necessarily by talking to them if you're tough and you know what you're doing. You don't appease them. Talking to an enemy is not, in my view, appeasement. I made 15 trips to Syria in 1990, 1991, at a time when Syria was on the list of countries who were state sponsors of terrorism. On the 16th trip, guess what? Lo and behold, Syria changed 25 years of policy and agreed for the first time in history to come sit at the table with Israel, which is what Israel wanted at the time, and thereby implicitly recognized Israel's right to exist.
Now, what he leaves out in this statement is that the Syrians had just witnessed us kick the holy crap out of the fourth largest standing army in the world. What a lot of my younger viewers do not remember from that time was, prior to the Gulf War, there was a great deal of debate as to whether the United States could stand up to the battle-hardened Iraqi soldiers and their tanks supplied by Russia and their thousands, tens of, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of troops. And that was the belief over there, that the U.S. didn't have the moxie or didn't have the battle experience with the current crop of soldiers to win a war face-to-face, nose-to-nose with the Iraqis. And, well, history pretty much tells us what happened there. That's why the Syrians sat down and said, okay, we probably should have a conversation with the Americans, because the next person down on the list from Iraq, as far as the threats to America went, were Iran and Syria and a few other people that were wetting their pants at the time. We don't have that situation now. We don't have that situation anything remotely like that now. We have a regime in North Korea that sees us as cowards. And this last attack on the Fitzgerald, having gone unanswered and even unacknowledged, has proven to him this. This is why Kim Jong-un has decided to ratchet up his rhetoric, because he knows that the current administration doesn't have the guts to do anything. They really won't do it. I promise you at this point, with all of the swag talk that has gone back and forth, this is just meant to extract some kind of a concession from China. That's all this is going to be. And it is also designed to drive up Trump's numbers. It's not working, but without any further ado, let's hear what Mr. Tellerson actually had to say for himself.
That's why we continue to call upon them to use that influence with North Korea to create the conditions where we can have a productive dialogue. We don't think having a dialogue where the North Koreans come to the table assuming they're going to maintain their nuclear weapons is productive. So that's really what the objective that we are about is. We have reaffirmed our position towards North Korea, that what we are doing, we do not seek a regime change. We do not seek the collapse of the regime. We do not seek an accelerated reunification of the peninsula. We do not seek an excuse to send our military north of the 38th parallel. And we're trying to convey to the North Koreans, we are not your enemy. We're not your threat, but you are presenting an unacceptable threat to us.
Can you imagine if we had used that language with Saddam Hussein? Are you kidding? Everything he just said that we allegedly don't want is exactly what we want. It's exactly what is in the best interest of all freedom-loving people everywhere. The collapse of the regime? Absolutely. That is should be number one on the list of things to do of the current administration, is get rid of that cancer over there in the north part of Asia. You don't talk to them. It's not the same thing as what happened in Syria after the Gulf War. No, entirely different scenario, different time, different person, different people. Now, here is Tillerson trying to backtrack.
What the president was doing is sending a strong message to North Korea in language that Kim Jong-un would understand, because he doesn't seem to understand diplomatic language. And I think the president just wanted to be clear to the North Korean regime that the U.S., unquestionable ability to defend itself,
Yeah, ability, willingness, two totally different things. Now, as promised, we have seen this picture 1,000 times, and it shows the damage above the waterline. We've seen the damage below the waterline. I will go ahead right now, just for the argument of this video, and say that all of the damage happened to the Fitzgerald simultaneously in the collision with the ACX Crystal, excuse me. The problem is, even if I grant that, it still was an attack. It wasn't an accident, and I will show you why here in something else we've seen a million times. This is the track of the ACX Crystal. Now I've got it fast forward up here to, everybody's familiar with this, 1618, 118 local time. Now, I'm going to, I've got it set on 2x now, and we're going to run this up to just about the time of the collision. There's the turn. There's the turn, of course, where he said I turned hard to starboard, when actually he made a gentle turn to port. Now also remember here, very important, at this time he already knows that there is a ship of some kind. He said U.S. destroyer in the interview, but we'll just go ahead and say he knows he has a 500-foot ship dark off to his port. Knows it's there, said he knew it was there, said he was running in the same direction as it. Knowing here, now he turns towards its path. Fact. Out of his mouth, that's what the captain said of the Crystal. 425. Excuse me, 125. Okay, now, here's 131. Now, I'm going to slow this down to a quarter speed. Now, even a quarter speed here equates to about 7 times faster than real time. Okay, now what we've seen here is that he has made a turn gently back to starboard. Now, I want you folks to think about this for a minute. You got a ship running here, and you've turned into his path. Whether you've warned him that you're going to do that or not is irrelevant. You know that you're going to be moving closer to the ship, to your port. Now, he's coming this direction, and you say, you flash your lights, and you say that, you did everything you could to avoid the collision. If as the result, remember this is quarter speed now, okay, and it's playing forward. Okay, there is 132. As you can see, he has flattened it out. Think about this if you're in a car and you're approaching an intersection and you're trying to time the light so that you get to the intersection just as it turns green, and there's a car trying to beat it through the yellow light, and he's coming off from your left, or in this case, to use nautical terminology, port. And he's running through there just as you're trying to time it. Okay, now you have a choice. If you continue on your current path, you believe you're going to hit him. Dead on. If you turn to your right, one thing you're going to guarantee is that you may postpone the time of the collision, but you're going to guarantee that you will hit him. Because you're not going to be, just like this giant ship, as people have said, you're not going to stop your ship on a dime. So you're going to be going through his line of travel at some point. Okay, so you might be postponing the collision, but by turning this direction, you're guaranteeing it's going to happen. You would have, if you wanted to miss him, have turned to port as hard as you could, knowing he was trying to go as fast as he could this direction, so that you would swing around behind him. How do we know that that's what you would do? Because here's the picture. As the result of this turn, and I'm playing it forward a quarter, 132, 133, what happened? Here's what happened. As the result of your turn to starboard, you hit this ship dead on, right in the middle. Meaning that if you had maintained your course, you wouldn't have hit him here. You might have hit him way back here by where the helicopter lands, because it would have given him more time to move. And if you had turned to port, you probably would have missed him. Especially if you would have thrown it into, you know, your screws into reverse or whatever they use to stop emergency. That's exactly what would have happened. If the resulting action of what you did is to hit this ship dead on, in this case, you were trying to. That's just physics. That's just common sense. The fact that after you hit him, you just continued on your way for a half an hour. You know, I could make the argument that maybe they picked up a distress call, a localized one, and that's when they realized they didn't sink him, and that they were coming back to finish the job, but realized other boats were on the scene now, and they couldn't do it. So that's why they cooked up the story. Called it in 50 minutes later, said, oh, oops, didn't mean to, all this kind of crap. And that's the beginning and the end of it. And folks, if I can figure this out, and the vast majority of you can figure this out, I guarantee you that military intelligence, Navy, whomever, has figured this out a long time ago. And they have communicated this up the chain. We have 7 dead sailors, and we have no answer for it. And right after, we see 2 launches from North Korea, they are emboldened. Because now they can know they can act with impunity. That the U.S., not that we can't, won't. Because of cowardice. Or because of some political calculation that you think you can use it for a while to up your numbers. I've tried to not make this about politics, but it's beyond anything right now other than that. Within a week of this happening, we should have leveled the place. Just as a response. To put Duterte on notice, as well as also the Chinese. That this isn't a game. And that when you kill U.S. servicemen, I mean, think about it now. Think about anybody out there who perhaps might be in these big cargo ships who maybe doesn't like the U.S. I mean, there's got to be some folks out there that are Muslims, ISIS, whatever, that work in that field. Look at what this tells them. You can do it, nothing will happen. The Japanese will talk to you for a day and let you go home the next. Because that's what's happened. That's the facts of it 2 months later. And the U.S. will just shuffle its feet and put its hands in its pockets and mumble a little bit and walk around and try to blame itself. Because that's what's happened. And there's been a lot of big talk and rhetoric, but when you see this kind of trash talk back and forth, Reagan wouldn't have done this, you know it. Bush wouldn't have done this. Twitter or not. It would have just happened. One night, somebody would have come on the television and said, something is happening, there is an operation underway, we're not telling you the details of it. Once it's done and successful, we will give you whatever details we deem prudent back to your local programming. So, anyway, I'm going to get out of here before I say anything more that I might regret. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone coming to the channel. We'll see you next time. Thank you.